and half of why we should be doing evangelism. Like I'm a firm advocate of evangelism, and I'm a firm advocate of evangelism that works. So not just being like offensive or belligerent with the gospel, but sharing the gospel in a way that maybe you can get people to listen to you for 5 minutes, because that's the important part. Either way, the gospel gets out there, but it's important how we share it. But the last week, I just gave you a little bit of history about the States. We started off with a biblical basis inside of public schools, as well as inside of the general cultural consensus was a Christian consensus. So if you're going to go up and talk to somebody about 35 or 40 years ago, Caitlin's already heard all this, so whatever. Yeah, I'm just teasing. If you're going to go up and talk to somebody about 30 or 45 years ago, everyone would generally know what you're talking about when you say, do the right thing. But currently, people are wondering who's right. What right are you talking about? Because if you're moving the base from there being a God as the foundation of your belief system, as a general consensus of the culture, to there not being a God or an ambiguous God that we don't know what it is, morality then, after that, becomes something that's decidable inside of the culture. So it's decidable by the consensus of the culture, as well as not really knowable, and it's creating the issues that we currently have. So back in the 60s, it was a revolution against the parents' previous generation and their value set for the previous years, where they said we have to do what's right, but they didn't give good explanations as to why and what that is. And there was a lot of hypocrisy coming from the church and coming home. So, if I'm an alcoholic and I come home and beat my kids, but I make them go to church every Sunday, that's going to send them a certain direction. And in the 60s, the youth revolted from Christianity being the basis of culture, as well as the established governments and those things. And with that actually came some good things. But by and large, the overarching thing that came is a loss of truth. And so they experimented with drugs, they experimented with sex, and getting rid of those cultural boundary systems to see what was there, as well as to find truth inside of themselves or in other religions and beliefs. So that's what happened in the 60s. It was a dramatic shift for the U.S. and the West at large. It happened around the world. But the things that started out really good, in a way, with more freedom, ended up with more problems and a loss of truth. So free love ended up with divorce and confusion about sexuality, as well as children with not being wanted, feeling like they're not wanted, is an overarching thing. I'm not saying this in all of society, but by and large. Also, abortion ended up as a arbitrary absolute, and I'll play a video here in a second that explains what arbitrary absolutes are. But it ended up as an arbitrary absolute given to the people as something as an option. Also, homosexuality and loss of sexual identity is a result of the movement, as well as a loss of meaning and truth. So, you have to think about these things. If we lose Scripture as the foundation of our culture, we're left with very sociological law and arbitrary absolutes. If truth is relative, what do we base morality and law on? So this question you have to ask. What are you going to base morality and law on inside of a nation or inside of a people group where truth becomes relative? So you end up with the 51% deciding what's right and wrong for everybody else. Yes?
I have a question. Are you saying that truth wasn't relative before? Because you kind of stated
no,
that.
Truth just isn't relative. Okay. It's just not relative.
Well, you said the what is right.
Yeah.
People knew what is right is. What do you mean by that?
As a general consensus. It's a general consensus because Christianity was the basis of Western society until the 1960s.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Coming out of the Enlightenment. And there was a shift towards deism and Christianity. I'll explain later sometime. But anyhow, without that as a basis, you're left with relative societal decisions for people. So whether that's an elite, so somebody really powerful like in a communist country, deciding what's the good of the people. We're deciding for the good of the people, or the party deciding what's the good of the people. Or in a democratic country, the 51%. So 51% gets to decide what's good for everybody else. But if we're going from a biblical base, what you have is absolutes that are fixed, that can't be moved by society. by which the society governs itself. And people argue about what exactly that is, even with a biblical base. But without a biblical base, you're left with something that's very confusing. Outside of the absolutes found in Scripture, what happens to the dignity of human life? Without God, what makes man special? There's another question. So your culture, as well as even growing up in the church, because all of us have grown up inside of post the 60s, so we all kind of have a mindset where there's a lot of confusion about the dignity of human life and what makes man special, right? And that's, if you're listening to the rhetoric inside of politics, as well as inside of the social idea behind naturalism and helping the earth flourish, there's no distinction between man and the other created order. But if you're going on a biblical base, there's a large distinction between man and the other created order, where God had put man in charge of it to take care of it, but he was different than the created order. So the dignity of human life then just becomes decidable by people groups. So if you think of like communist countries, you're a number. If you think of atheism, people end up being a number in atheist societies because it works like a mechanism. And I'll show a video in a second that explains that. Where does meaning and purpose of life come from outside of the Christian worldview? It's a vacuum, right? Because people are looking for meaning and purpose. And in the West, in the East they have Eastern religions, in the West it's a vacuum, waiting to be filled by something. So us as Christians, we have answers for that, but we have to go about it realizing this is the culture that we're talking to in the West. So like most of Latin America has somewhat of a Catholic root, but also struggles with this. All of North America holds this as a predominant worldview. Most of Europe holds this as a predominant worldview. And so if you're talking to people in the street, by and large, you're going to come across with a few things. I'm basically a good person. That's what you're going to hear no matter who you talk to.
Yeah.
So if they believe in a God, they believe that there's some kind of scale system. And that basically I'll weigh out the scale system and I'm a good person. And if they don't believe in a God, they have no framework for morality. Morality is just a facade. Because you have to think about, like on the basis of real atheism, morality is stupidity. You know, like holding morals, because that's allowing yourself to be weaker than the people around you. And so we're left in kind of a strange catch-22 quasi-religious culture in the West where the culture itself doesn't really know what it is. It's kind of up in arms. And I feel that the occult and New Age is filling the vacuum that Christianity should be filling. And I feel that that's what's happening. So we have there's a lot of spirituality and even good things that come through that line of thinking that can sustain a culture, but in the end is worse off, right? But that's who is filling the vacuum that is left by Christianity not filling the vacuum, because people need answers for why they're living, otherwise they won't continue living. People will also satisfy themselves, as I've learning doing evangelism, this is what I found. People satisfy themselves with a worldview that's good enough, but may not be adequate. And as Christians, we follow the Lord, but how far do we follow the Lord? We like to follow the Lord until it feels safe, and then God's always challenged us to grow outside of that. But as non-Christians, there are a lot of people that will satisfy themselves with an answer that's adequate, or that's good enough but not adequate. So, in this kind of a culture, there's no way to distinguish who's right, the ruling class or the resulting class. These are people just looting a store. How can we say that's wrong? You know, on the basis of atheism, you couldn't say that doing anything wrong to someone else is wrong if people become a number or a part of a machine or are separate from that machine and there's no morality. You could justify anything. But also, in the upper arcing society, in the controlling class, what would make them any different? And that's what we're facing in the future of the West. We're not there yet, but we're seeing changes inside of our culture that's creating a system where morality is something that's so relative, but you have to maintain a society. And in U.S. society especially, we're told that you have freedom, you have free will, you can do whatever you want, you should pursue your dreams, you can go do anything. But you can't create a culture like that because it can't sustain itself. So what you see it, those are the moral precepts given to people, but on top of that you end up with more oppression coming from an authority power. And so it'll be interesting to see where it snowballs in the future, but because that's the worldview that we hold, it might snowball in that direction with a very controlled society. I was just talking about the occult is part of this vacuum filler. And I mean, it's a large part of it. If you, I just listened through, and I disagree with, and just so everybody knows, I just listened through parts of Morals and Dogma on in my headphones, and it's just amazing how much of straight from the occult is in our system in the U.S., in our movies, in the music, in the public school education, and things like this. And I'm not saying that all of it is bad, that in all of those things, and I'm also not saying that that it's that all of those people are knowingly manipulating the U.S., right? Maybe some are, but one thing I will say is that it's the predominant worldview that's emerging inside of the West, because people are looking to fill that vacuum.